Working with electricity is dangerous. This video is an example of what we've done. Read the disclaimer carefully before you continue.
It's time to start wiring the PV breaker box. So what we've got in the PV breaker box is 3 breakers, because I've got 3 PV panels. So this is between the PV panel and the charge controller. So if something goes wrong, there's a short or something on the PV panel, I can just switch it off. The way that I've configured this is, if one of the panels had to be switched off, there's 2 panels that still can charge the system. So it's sort of also got built-in redundancy. I've also got a lightning arrestor in this one. This is to protect lightning strikes on the roof on the PV panels. Similar configuration as we did in the battery breaker box. This is a spare. I unfortunately cut out one little window too much, so I'm using this switch as a filler at the moment. Maybe at a later stage I'll find some use for it. Then on this side there's a 40 amp breaker that can basically switch off the power of all of the PV panels to the battery. And next to it is a 1 amp breaker, and this is a safety switch. In essence, what we're doing with this is we're wiring this between ground and neutral, so that if there is a positive short, or a short from positive to ground, what will happen is 1 amp is not a lot of current, so once there's more than 1 amp of current, this will basically kick off. Now that on its own won't do anything, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin these 2 switches together. So as the 1 amp breaker basically kicks off, what will happen is it will also switch off all the power from the panels to the battery. The reason for that is we don't want a short over the battery. If we make a short over the battery, we can actually get some really bad results. The batteries can get very hot, and they can actually cause a fire. So that's sort of a safety precaution that's built in. We've already wired the earth wire to the surge arrestor, or the lightning protector, and also to the 1 amp breaker. So too we've done with the negative cable to the surge arrestor, and as you'll see, there's a thicker cable coming out at the bottom, so this goes to the negative of all of the PV panels. So this is protection. This is sort of isolating each one of the circuits, although it's only on one of the poles. This is to protect us against lightning strikes, and that's a space filler at the moment. Okay, I've finally brought down the wires from the PV panels on the roof, and what I'm busy doing now is just taking them through from the PV panels on top, through the junction box where there's isolator switches, and then into the battery cabinet, where it will go right into the charge controllers. Okay, finally all the wiring is done. My switch panel for PV, you'll see there's red wires coming in, that's color coded. I've got a green line, a blue line, and a pink line, or a red line. So those are the positives from the PV panels, and then the black wires running here into the battery cabinet are the negative wires. You'll also see there's a surge protector here. I don't use it as a surge protector, but rather a lightning protector. So in essence that's metal oxide varistors that creates a link to earth. So you'll see earth wire at the bottom, and on top the blue wire is battery positive and the other one is the black one is negative. Okay, coming over to this side. So each one of the PV panels has got a breaker switch, and then underneath it runs into the battery box, and I'll show you now what that looks like. This switch here is a breaker switch for a earth fault at the PV panels. Now, the positive line going from the charge controllers to the battery goes through this switch. But this switch is strapped to a 1 amp switch on this side, and in essence what we're doing is there's a wire going to ground, and underneath you'll see is a black wire there, so that would be battery negative. So if we get a earth or a positive earth on the PV panels, it will mean that the current will start flowing through this, and 1 amp is actually not a lot for big batteries like this. So very quickly the 1 amp breaker will actually switch off, and the moment it switch off, because it is strapped to the 40 amp breaker that takes all the PV voltage through to the battery for charging, it will also switch that off. So it's just a protection. Okay, this switch sitting here is doing absolutely nothing. It's a filler. Maybe I'll find some work for it later. Okay, so the breaker box is closed up. That's what it looks like. You'll see the earth protection. So as I've mentioned, if there's a positive to earth somewhere, it will switch the PV panels off, so that there can't be a short over the batteries and the batteries can't burn out. Isolator for each one of the PV panels. There's 3 of them on the roof: red circuit, blue circuit, green circuit, surge arrestor, and the filler. You'll see it is mounted in a external breaker box that is properly sealed, so it can be in the wind and the weather. Okay, next step.